going to wind off to an early end probably here on this Saturday afternoon at Wayne State University. Roll the vote. September 19th, 2015, live in Detroit, Michigan. Wayne State University. Roll the vote. This next panel that we have coming up is probably really the meat and potatoes of why we're here. This is more or less our Politics in Michigan panel. This panel is sort of obvious why we put it together for a Roll the Vote show, I think. Some of the other ones we might have a question here or there, but politics in the state of Michigan. Many different things going on here in the state, from the conditions of our roads, the conditions of our schools, the conditions of our health care, everything from taxation to privatization to militarization. It's all going on here in the state of Michigan. To my left here immediately I have Kim McCurry. She's a representative in part today with the Libertarian Party here in the state of Michigan. Hello, how are you?
Pretty good.
All right, nice to meet you, nice to meet you. To her left we have Scotty Bowman, is that correct, Scott?
Yes.
Fantastic, and I have it down here that you are the Michigan Director of Our American Initiative, is that correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now most people probably may have heard of the Libertarian Party, but I'm wondering, what's this other one, Scott? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, well, Our America Initiative was originally started by former Governor of New Mexico, Gary Johnson, who is for smaller government, less involvement of government personal lives, more personal freedom, and one of the issues does include drug law reform. And he founded the organization actually back, and I'm thinking it was in early 2011, and it was around the same time that leading up to the presidential contest. And eventually he became a presidential candidate, at which point he stopped having Our America Initiative to deal with his own campaign, but after having a presidential campaign back in 2012 on the ballot as a Libertarian, he returned back to direct Our America Initiative. And again, the focus of Our American Initiative from the beginning has been minimizing government, giving an optimal opportunity for people to be free to make their own personal choices. And now the latest model that Our America Initiative is working under is acting as a supportive organization across the country to local and state efforts to reform government in such a manner, to reduce the scope of government, more transparency, more individual freedom, and also more open ballots. That's another big issue Our America Initiative is working on. Because, for instance, the national presidential debates, for example, have become pretty much a Republican and Democratic Party animal. There are other debates, but the major parties don't participate in them, and then the mass media doesn't cover them, or not nearly as much, that do involve the alternative. So we really want to open up the debates so that people from any political party or any candidate, if he's an independent also, who has his name on enough ballots in a presidential election in enough states that if he were to win those states would have enough electoral votes to win the presidency. Anyone who meets those qualifications of balloted well enough to have a mathematical chance of winning the presidency should be able to be in those debates. Now, a lot of people might think that might be too huge a field, but right now, see, that's not really a legitimate excuse. Because right now, if you look at the Republican debates, you got, 10 different candidates at a time in the upper tier debate. And the qualification I just described, typically in the last few elections, would have included maybe about 5 or 6 people at most.
Oh, wow, right on, man, right on. Very cool. Well, this is the Politics in Michigan panel. We're going to be right back with some questions and answers and delve a little bit more into what's going on here in the state of Michigan. Stay tuned. We are at Wayne State University. Roll the vote 2015.
Somewhere else. My advice to you. My advice to you.
All right, welcome back. Roll the vote. Wayne State University. We are here at the Politics in Michigan panel. We have Kim McCurry. Did I say that right, Kim?
Yes, you did.
Fantastic. We have Scotty Bowman. Did I say that right, sir?
Yes, you did.
Fantastic. And we are here at Wayne State University in Detroit. We're discussing some current political things here in the state of Michigan. I would like to just start right at the top. What's probably the most obvious topic here in the current state is marijuana. Marijuana here in the state of Michigan is a big voting issue. You cannot ignore it anymore. It's silently and slowly been creeping in behind the scenes and becoming more and more of a mainstream topic pretty much every week. Time magazine has published a large article, or several articles now. Even front cover of Time magazine several times now has featured marijuana. National Geographic has done a special or two now on marijuana. The History Channel plays television shows on a regular basis now concerning marijuana. So it's the elephant in the room now. And here in the state of Michigan, I am aware of several different petition initiatives that are going on in the state. But I'd like to turn it over now and let Kim tell us a little bit about what she knows about marijuana in Michigan, about what's going on in her neck of the woods. Kim, take it away.
Well, I'm going to start off with a few reasons why marijuana should be legalized or decriminalized in the state. The Libertarian Party has always been for the decriminalization of marijuana, which basically means ending prohibition. Legalization means government will still have some type of regulation. We understand that the majority of the people can act responsibly on their own and do not need to be punished to follow someone's need for control on something someone else abuses. We also recognize that the number of people that end up in prisons for nonviolent crimes for carrying around a couple of ounces of marijuana may end up in violent positions that they have to protect themselves from in prison, making them look violent when they actually protect themselves. It sort of does this rolling effect where a nonviolent event ended up having to become violent and everything just continues to go violent after that. If we didn't send people to prison for nonviolent crimes, they'd still be able to stay at work, they'd be able to stay with their families, which many families end up on welfare because you take away part of their income. We have to remember that it breaks people's spirits when we send them to prison when they don't need to be. In addition, it breaks the family's spirit. The kids end up having a lot of issues where they might end up choosing a wrong path and following their parent to prison, not because of anything that they didn't do on purpose, but just because they didn't know what else to do because they don't know what they can do without being punished. And then the other thing was jobs that I mentioned in there where they could have a job if they weren't in prison. But in Michigan, we know that there aren't that many jobs. Even though our unemployment rate is falling a little bit, it's because people are falling off the lists. Legalizing marijuana, particularly the hemp portion, would bring several jobs to Michigan. We have empty fields that could grow marijuana, which has a faster cycle than many other crops that we do. And then we have the manufacturing buildings that are empty already because manufacturers have left the state. We can make paper, we can make biofuels, we can make food, we can make clothing, we can make hempcrete, which, as Steve mentioned earlier, we need something to fix our roads. Hempcrete is a product made of hemp and limestone, which could possibly cost less to repair roads using these than regular asphalt. Something that we could look into. We can also make paints and lotions and furniture. Michigan could come back as the manufacturing state if we legalized hemp now. Because if we don't do it now, another state's going to do it, and our empty factories will continue to be empty. That being said, as Steve mentioned, there are 2 petitions going around currently for legalizing marijuana. One just touches base on marijuana and marijuana-infused products for over 21. They aren't setting up a specific tax, and they're leaving that to the legislators. They only allow at home for 2 plants for your own personal use. The other petition going around lets you have up to 12 at home, and they also specifically say they're going to legalize hemp for the industries. These are things that the Libertarian Party can get behind, because we want to see progress in Michigan, and we want it to be up to the people of Michigan and not to be restricted by government anymore.
Oh yeah, there we go, hey, ladies and gentlemen. That was Kim and Kim McCurry, and she's here talking on behalf of the Libertarian Party of the state of Michigan, giving us a little insight as far as some of the marijuana petitions here in the state go. I think one of the larger groups around the bill you discussed is what, My Legalize, is that who they are?
My Legalize, Michigan Legalize, yes.
Okay.
I've actually had a contact with them, and if you want to contact me at chair@michiganlp.org, I can actually get you to somebody in your local county that is heading up the petitions if you want to help volunteer with them, or if you want to just sign the petition, they can tell you where they're going to be.
Fantastic, and I do understand the Libertarian Party as a whole generally supports a wider range of cannabis applications, not specifically just medical or just recreational. I understand the Libertarian Party is in support of the industrial, the textile, the biological, the medical. There's the wider range, the bigger picture. Is that correct?
The bigger picture, because it's not just about having a good time or feeling better from the pain for the medical aspect. It's the fact that the regulations have made it where we can't do things that our forefathers in this country did. Washington mentioned that hemp was the future of this country. And what does the government do in the 1900s? They cancel that effect because other industries were afraid of it.
It is insanity, and there's a large history, and you have to love the internet. Now I'm 6 years old, and in my youth, I got to see the internet come about, and I get to see where it's at now, and it's amazing how information's at our fingertips like it never was before. When I was younger, it was sort of easier to tell us the way that they wanted us to believe, but now it's impossible to hide the fact. Marijuana and cannabis has been here long before this country was founded as a country. It definitely was a viable answer then, and it's most definitely a viable answer now. Now, I'm Scotty. You've been a little quiet over there. Marijuana in the state of Michigan, is this also a suitable political topic for you?
Oh, yeah.
Want to weigh in?
Yeah, and there are bills up there in the legislature. What's interesting, a lot of people don't understand the committee process, but a lot of times a rep will introduce a bill and you'll be like, well, gee, how come they never voted on it? Or how will my rep vote on this? And it's tricky, but once you find out about a bill, you need to locate what committee it's in and start trying to get that committee to actually meet and vote it out of the committee. And then finally, your legislator will get a chance to vote on it. If your legislator happens to be on a committee already, that's even better. But our America Initiative has had people go up to Lansing and talk to legislators and made it clear that any of the bills that have been scripted for legalizing marijuana in various degrees or for clarifying in a positive way the rights of medical marijuana distributors, that those bills, get a fair hearing. For instance, right now, what the medical marijuana law did is it does make it legal for people with cards to purchase up to a certain amount of marijuana for themselves, for caregivers, to have a certain number of plants and sell a certain amount of pot. What it never addressed were the rights of people to have storefronts to make it available for people. And like I live in Detroit right now, where we've actually had a lot of storefronts popping up, which potentially could bring the city a whole lot of business. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of backwards thinking by neighbors that I'm frequently up against, where I'm constantly having to tell them, this is good for the city, because they're like, oh my, it's going to destroy our neighborhood with all these pot places. I'm like, this is business coming into your neighborhood. What's wrong with this? Don't we need money in our city? We need, politicians, don't you want those taxes? Not that I'm a big tax guy, but I know they like taxes. And so, this is something that we got to build on. And like I was saying earlier, is you got to contact your state legislator and make sure that your state legislator is aware that you favor greater availability to people for marijuana and lighter punishments. I personally think, and also speaking for our America Initiative, believes in a medical approach, not a criminal approach, to some of the other drugs that may not be quite as benign as marijuana. And, you know, I would emphasize, for instance, getting rid of mandatory sentencing. There's a lot of really harsh sentences out there for drugs. We got this guy right now still serving a life sentence for cocaine, Rick Worsham in Michigan, for instance. And it's just been going on and on forever. And they even repealed the life sentence, but now I think he's finally going to get a resentencing hearing, but we'll see how that goes. But he's been serving more time, like 28 years. Then I watch TV and I look at what people are serving in prison for violent crimes like outright homicide, you know, even premeditated murder. And there's people getting out of prison after half that amount of time. So, you know, it's basically we have right now a society that seems to favor violence over peaceful voluntary activity. And I think we need to turn that around and turn our society into one that favors peaceful voluntary activity over violence.
That's absolutely, I can definitely see that. Well, many topics here at Wayne State University, the roll of the vote, September 19th. I think I've said that those under 2 million times today. September 19th, 2015. Roll the vote, Wayne State University. This is the Politics in Michigan panel. We are currently discussing the state of marijuana here in the state of Michigan. Kim, you've been taking notes. You have something you'd like to add, perhaps?
I just wanted to add one thing about the, I just had that, the mandatory sentencing. It's not just leaving people in prison. It's after something's been redone, why leave them there when it's no longer a crime? It shouldn't even be there in the first when they shouldn't have been there in the first place. But the Libertarian Party does also agree that the other items should also be less sentences or medically switched like Portugal does.
Oh, you're referring to switching from a criminal penalty to a medical issue
Yeah.
or something?
Not medical punishment, but
Okay.
they receive vouchers to go to health centers.
That's pretty much what you were saying there too, isn't it, Scotty? It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. So it's where they turn it not from a criminal issue, but they turn it into a health issue. Is that
Yes.
correct? You'd like to see that here in the state of Michigan?
We'd like to see that everywhere.
Yeah, me too, personally. On a personal note, that's exactly what I'd like to see. Let's move it off of marijuana here. The Libertarian Party. Have any hot topics other than marijuana? We got fracking going on here in the state of Michigan. It's a huge topic, right? Why do you guys know about that?
The Libertarian Party views that as fracking is a business, and so long as that business does not harm anybody else's property, then they should be allowed to do it. The controversy comes in that there's been evidence that fracking can do damage to other people's property. In this case, we do view that they should give back to those purposes, and then they should regulate themselves into making sure they don't do that again.
Yeah, that's excellent. Fracking. Have you seen the bad side of fracking? Are you into that at all? Have you seen pictures of what happens when they have fracking accidents, pipeline breaks and things like that?
I've seen the fires out of the faucets.
Oh yeah, right here in our very state. Was it the Keystone Pipeline, ladies and gentlemen? Is it right here in the state of Michigan? Anybody familiar with that? Where they're actually piping?
I don't think
Tar
that's
sands
Keystone.
oil?
I thought Keystone Pipeline was in Alaska.
Okay, what are we piping here through the state of Michigan? It's coming through Canada. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yes, I am. That goes underneath the Mackinac Bridge. But I'm not completely informed on it. All I do know is that they're more worried about, there hasn't been a real big leak, but the piping is getting old, and they're worrying that it's going to bust at any time.
Yep. The way that I understand it is these pipelines were originally designed to move oil, and now they're moving this fractured type oil. It has a lot more solid in it than it should have. Because you're designing these pipes to move oil, but now you're pushing this sort of sludge through these pipes, and it's causing fractures along the way. It's right here in the state of Michigan. It might be Enbridge, perhaps, that's what I'm thinking about. I don't think it's the Keystone, but there is a pipeline here through the state of Michigan, and they do pipe through the Canadian tar sands. That's an absolute fact. Michigan medical marijuana, fracking, water. We've heard all kinds of things going on here in the state of Michigan, and we'll be right back after this short break. Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at Wayne State University, Roll the Vote 2015. I'd like to talk a little bit about some personal things. There are a lot of things you could be doing, Scott. It's Saturday afternoon, you could be doing a million things. You could have a career as a sideshow traveling salesman if you wanted to. You could be doing anything in the world. But you have chosen to invest your time, energy, and effort into the field of politics here in the state of Michigan. If you don't mind me asking, could you give us a little bit of your background and maybe let us know kind of why you're doing this?
Okay, well, I actually first got involved in politics really early on. I mean, my father used to be politically active, and I'd help him hand out literature. He was a dedicated Democrat political activist, and had actually also run for judge, which would be a nonpartisan post, but ran for judge a couple of times in Harper Woods. So I had pretty close connections with political activity and been politically aware early on. I got interested in probably my teenage years, started thinking philosophically about what kind of laws really made sense and which ones didn't. And I actually had even then thought drug prohibition in general did not make sense to me. Controlling a person's private behavior just never made sense to me, and it still doesn't at this old age I've reached now. And so that's one thing that's been constant in my beliefs, is really personal behavior. It never made sense to me. Now at the same time, of course, I was raised by a liberal Democrat, I could add, who really did believe strongly in government playing a positive role economically and being a helper of people, and had that perspective. So it took a while for me to think differently in that area. And I'd say one of the big turning points, in fact, up until this turning point, I had actually considered myself to be a Marxist rather than a capitalist. And what changed my mind is a friend offered me a book called Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal by Ayn Rand to read. And at this point I was in college in Kalamazoo at Western Michigan. I was an undergrad in the 80s. I read that book, and I opened it a Marxist and closed it a laissez-faire capitalist. And the strongest point, just a big thick book, Ayn Rand, like a Russian immigrant. She wrote like a Russian. But the big point that really stuck in my head was that the same principle that I had sensed, but maybe not articulated, that made me believe that drug prohibition was wrong. The idea that a person's life is their own, it doesn't belong to somebody else, you're not somebody else's property, you should not be forced to do things because it's your life and you're not their slave. It's the what's it to them kind of thing. That same premise applies to everything else. And if I deny that premise in certain areas, what I'm doing is I'm not really sticking to that principle and saying this is a reason for doing something, because if it was, I would think differently in these other areas. And so I was really forced, if I accepted that idea, to believe that, well, if a person's life is their own, and they work and they earn money, then that is also their own. And no one else has a right to that but they do. And if they choose to be generous and share that money, that's their own business. If they choose to keep it all for themselves, of course, money's no good if you don't spend it somehow. So someone's going to get it eventually. Right. There's the other side of it. But I guess if they choose to put it in a box or burn it or something, it's still their own. Though that's very unlikely anyone does that with their money. Right. So the point is that I understood now a connection between different ideas. And so now when I look at everything, any political action, it's really through the lens of, is it consistent with a belief that a person has a right to live for his or her own sake? Is it consistent with that? And if it isn't, then I need to reject that. And of course, in the real world, we live so far removed from that principle that I do recognize that you got to meet people halfway sometimes. But it doesn't mean you're ever conceding that the halfway point is right. It's just sometimes what's practical and what's necessary, rather than being stuck totally in the other side, that you're moving in the direction of expanding individual choice. And so I mean, really, to me, it's a moral thing. And to me, it's morally wrong, just as other crimes that are labeled crimes are morally wrong, to force somebody to do something that against their will. It's a rejection of their, the sanctity of themselves as a free individual. And so that really is at the core of what I do. And what have I been doing? Okay, so I got involved in the Libertarian Party back in the 80s. Now I'm putting my Libertarian hat because our America Initiative is nonpartisan. We do not support any candidates or political parties, but just speaking for Mr. Bowman's activities. Joined the Libertarian Party then back in the 80s, not long after reading some of those Ayn Rand books. And became more and more active, initially supporting candidates, realizing pretty early on that they frequently had spaces available on the ballots that people could fill. Decided to run for office myself, and have really since the early 90s been a perennial candidate. Where I'm running for different offices, not the same one all the time, but been consistently on the ballot, and using that as a vehicle to get libertarian ideas out. And there's actually two uses the phrase libertarian I should bring up while I'm talking about the partisan, nonpartisan matter. Because sometimes you'll hear people refer to a small L libertarian, and that's the name of an ideology. Ideologies, unless it's a person's name attached, like Marxism is named after Karl Marx, unless there's a person's name in there, usually ideologies do not have a capital letter in front. Whereas libertarian with a capital L, such as Libertarian Party, is a proper noun, and we'll be referring to Libertarian Party. So for instance, our America Initiative is a small L libertarian organization. So the libertarian ideas, in that sense, still apply.
Oh, you guys are everywhere.
Oh yes, he's actually our political director.
Oh, I see it. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You ladies and gentlemen, we've been listening to Scotty Bowman. He is the director of Our America Initiative here in the state of Michigan. We've also had the pleasure of listening to Kim McCurry. She is here talking about the Libertarian Party here in the state of Michigan. Kim, now we heard Scotty self-professed. He ran for office. That's pretty impressive, Scott. I gotta put my hat off to you. I've never tried to do that. I think that's pretty impressive.
Why don't you try it sometime?
Yeah, it's an eye-opener, huh? Now, how about you, Kim? Have you ever tried to run for a political office?
Yes and no. Last year I was on the ballot, but I ended up getting a job after that where I could not run. I currently work for the state. If I was able to run, I even had the perfect slogan because I was on the ballot for State Board of Education.
I'm ready here. Come
My
on.
last name at the time was Moore with double O. It was more choices, more opportunities, more success.
How can you not
More for
vote for
State Board
Moore?
of Education.
Oh, that's great. That's a good one. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Might I add something? And she also earned more votes than all of our other candidates in spite of not running. Because what happened is while she removed herself from the race, the state would not take her off the ballot because the way the election law was written is, I think the only way to get off the ballot was to like move or die.
Was to move
And-
out of the district. And I was on the state top things. I had to move out of state, which you can't do when working in Lansing.
So her zero campaign actually earned her more votes.
It's pretty funny.
I guess more. There you go. People saw more and they wanted more.
They wanted
Earned her
more.
more votes than any of our other campaigns.
Oh, so the more I hear about the Libertarian Party, I'm falling in love. Thank you very much.
I was going to say that might also have to do with the fact that I started out with the Tea Party groups.
Really?
And so I already had a lot of connections with people who were disenfranchised from the establishment.
Very cool. Now, could you give us a little bit of background, Kim? We've got Scotty's story a little bit. Kim, how'd you get kind of involved in politics, and when you made that decision, what was the big spring?
The big spring was the 2008 presidential candidates debates. I kept watching how all they wanted to do was grow government, except for Ron Paul. Then I started watching some new stuff, and yes, the Glenn Beck thing got us to do the meetups, and that's where I helped start organize the Tri-City 912 up in Bay City, Midland area. And I was able to get involved with politics that way. I started meeting people. But the more that the Tea Party kept working with the current system, because of certain parties being more electable, I still felt the tug of being more of a libertarian. Even when I started working with the Tea Party, I was like, well, I'm definitely here because I'm a libertarian. And because of that, I was able to meet people that brought me into connection with the real Libertarian Party. So that's how I got into connection with the Libertarian Party. Since the party is a little bit small, I went to the convention and I was nominated as treasurer, and all I had to say was that I'm an accountant.
You keep volunteering and see a thread here.
And so I was a treasurer for 3 years, and now I'm the chair. I'd really like to try to get people to see that the libertarians are a wide variety of people. We have a huge spectrum from those who want no government to those who just want it minimized. And if you want just smaller government in every aspect of your life, smaller government in every aspect, then you probably should at least check the Libertarian Party out.
I would agree. We had the pleasure of meeting some people from the Libertarian Party the last roll of the vote at the Lansing Center, downtown Lansing, right there on the river. That was a beautiful event center, by the way. And that was a very nice experience. I got to hang out late, and the Libertarian Party stayed all day, all night, and then they graced us with an hour-long panel at the end of their long day, and it showed me, the strength of their resolve, and I think that's very important in politics. It's easy to cherry-pick events and go to events where there's 20,000 people. It's much more difficult to come out here, this video camera, there's a cyber audience, and spend a Saturday out here, laying down a message. It's a little bit more difficult to do this, so it's a pretty interesting way that libertarians go about doing things. I'm pretty impressed. I think you might find a convert in me soon or later, I'm not really sure. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Roll to Vote. This is Wayne State University. This is the Michigan Politics Panel. I'd like to talk about the road situation here a little bit. I mean, I'm not the smartest tool in the shed or the sharpest tool in the barn, or however you want to say this, but roads, you would just think that since the invention of them, that we may have got one right, perhaps by now, that could deal with the elements, that could do what it's supposed to do. And it seems like it's an often reoccurring topic now that I'm this years old. I've heard roads come up a few times in my lifetime as a political platform, and I'm almost wondering if it's not in some small way some sort of filibuster type action. The roads always sort of being an issue. There's always a joke about the Michigan road season, go along with deer season here, how you see the Michigan road workers, and that's what's going on. And you see billboards all over the place, and the potholes aren't getting any smaller, and the roads aren't getting any better, and it's interesting. But on the subject of roads, since it is such a political issue, are there any kind of solutions or any ideas you may have regarding that situation?
The libertarians would really love to see it privatized. Now, in today's world, that is really hard to do because it hasn't been done for hundreds of years. But if the government does have to be involved, we should have them do it more properly. Right now, the regulations on roads is they only need to be 2 feet deep, where in other countries it's 4 feet deep of concrete, which makes it stand up longer, so they don't have to be repaired as often.
I think that has to do with permafrost, is that correct?
Part
Is something to do with permafrost?
Part of it could be that, but there's also other materials we could think of using for roads. Would they expand better or not expand better? Some of the roads here have been starting to move over to that lined freeway stuff that people don't like because it makes your car wobble. But it does last up to the winters better. But they seem to keep repairing the same roads. That is something we have to look into. Why do they keep repairing the same roads when it doesn't need to be repaired?
The same 4 guys out there with a shovel full of that black tarry stuff that they just seem to keep shoving in there. It's an interesting thing. Scotty, how do you want to weigh in, man? I'm sure within your realm you've seen talk about roads
Well,
over and over.
specifically on the proposal that had come about where the voters voted on increasing taxes for the roads, we found that it was around 80% saying no, which if one looks at the history of ballot proposals in Michigan is very exceptional. It was more resounding, a loud, deafening shout of H no, to the legislature than anything I've ever heard. Nonetheless, if we look at, and in fact, this is one issue that was addressed on the Michigan Our America Initiative webpage. If you look at, if you look under states on ouramericainitiative.com and drop down, look, there will be a mention of our view on taxes for roads. Our position is that we don't need to raise taxes for roads. There's other areas of government to cut, other areas of government that are harmful. I mean, over here at Roll the Vote emphasizing marijuana, you got the marijuana prohibition. It costs money to enforce those laws. It costs money to have those courts. It costs money to put people in jail. It costs money to put people in prison. All that costs money. And of course, if opportunity costs is money lost, because giving the government taxes anything that's legal, they'd be taxing that marijuana and getting some money out of it. Not that I like taxes, I just said I didn't. But the bottom line is they would do that, and they could do that, and that would be revenue source for them. So all of that, just as one issue, shows that we do not need to raise taxes to fund the roads. We have, one thing I've been driving, and actually yesterday I said out loud to myself in the car, but now other people can hear me. Thank God that tax increase didn't pass. And I wasn't even thinking about having to pay the taxes. What I was thinking about, I was stuck in traffic again. Because it seemed like everywhere I turn, I'd see orange signs and not be able to drive. And I swear, if they were doing any more construction on those roads, I would have to get like a little, like one of those little helicopter things or an ultralight or something and fly over it all just to get to work on time. I mean, maybe I wouldn't be able to work. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, it isn't that there isn't enough being done to fix roads. Apparently they're just doing a really bad job of it. Using materials that wear out quickly. I think a restructuring of the way contractors are hired so that we have competitive bidding along with responsibility for a fixed number of years. I understand that has been already done in some cases. I think it needs to be the standard that when you competitively bid, that take care of road, that you're actually bidding that road will be in a specific level of condition for a certain number of years. If you use crummy materials, you're going to have to be paying more people to keep coming out there and fixing it. Use better materials, then you can just put your hands up and go, okay, we're done, and we'll talk to you in a few years. It seems to me that given that kind of incentive, corporations would lean toward more quality work on the roads. Again, as far as the tax issue goes, though, I think what's really happening here, and I've seen it on the municipal level, for instance, you frequently will see like fire and public safety millages, because it's almost non-controversial that a municipality needs a fire department and police.
Right.
And so what they'll do though, is they'll spend their money though, you look at what that same municipality is spending money on, you'll find a significant amount of money spent on a whole bunch of other things that may not be quite as popular as fire protection and police. And so what they do is they spend all their money on these other things, and then they turn around and they say, oh, we can't afford to pay our police, we can't afford to pay our firemen, we don't want your house to burn down or want it to get ransacked every other day, you better vote for this millage.
Right.
And so I think we have the same thing going on here now with our state, is they want to raise taxes. That's the real thing. It isn't about fixing roads. It's about raising taxes. And in fact, 2 legislators recently wanted to not raise taxes. Yeah, they did some other things wrong. But one thing they wanted to do right that would benefit all of us is not raise taxes. And gee, they're the ones who get expelled. The ones that want to rob us, armed robbery through taxation, those are the people that are still in there, and the people that sat there in judgment over these 2 people who did a few bad things on their own time, well, mostly. So, that's just another factor. We have all these, we could get rid of the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We're giving out corporate welfare to all these corporations that can easily support themselves. We're trying to sell Michigan to tourists. Well, the people benefit from tourism and sell Michigan to tourists. Okay, they don't need more taxes to pay for government commercials promoting Michigan. I mean, other people can promote Michigan themselves. The list goes on, but we can save money by cutting down on the prisons, and even like the other drugs, we got all these people in prison for other drugs. We can save money by not doing the corporate welfare, and in the end, there's no need for any tax increases. In fact, we could probably cut taxes if the government spent its money right.
Yeah, I think, on a personal note, and it's just Steve talking here, of course. I think I would absolutely agree with that. I think it's impossible for them to balance the budget because once that's done, they're out of a job. And that's just the way that I sort of see things. That's just my personal view. This is the Politics in Michigan panel, and this is the roll of the vote. Now, on the closing remarks here, I'd like for you all to just to kind of take a couple seconds. You did take your time. You did show up out here. You do know we are videoing, and you guys are watching. I do appreciate everybody watching this from the convenience of their home on their computers. This is just a number in a series for this roll of the vote. The next ones that are coming, we've got bigger and better things all along the way. This is the Politics of Michigan panel. Saturday afternoon, Wayne State University. Kim, Scotty, you guys came all the way down here to share some things with us. In your closing remarks, 5 minutes or less, could you share those things with us before you leave?
There are so many things that we can do in Michigan that would help bring back Michigan as a vital part of this country. Legalizing marijuana and hemp is just one of them. Fixing the roads is another, and Scotty did point on many of the items that we can do that with. Tying the roads to some legislation, My Legalize actually has part of their tax proposal going to the transportation industry. We might not necessarily agree with that. Again, libertarians aren't for taxes either, but it might be something that helps both areas out. We've got a lot of other bills that we'd love to talk to you about in the next one, and I think that we'll do it today, is that we'd really like to focus on getting people out of prison that don't belong there because they're not violent, and bringing jobs to Michigan.
Thank you very much for listening. That was Kim McCrory from Libertarian Party, Michigan. Next is Scotty giving us some closing remarks. Scotty, please.
Okay, well, one thing I want to mention is Our America Initiative on the national website has clearly expressed the view that marijuana should be treated in a manner similar to the way most states treat alcohol. Specifically, as far as the federal government goes, the federal government should just get out of the way and let the states figure out how they, the people living within the states, I should say, because that really a state is just a jurisdiction. But let the people in the states determine what the policy should be in their own state. And as far as that goes, of course, I would support Michigan being a state in which, at least as free in regards to marijuana as it treats alcohol. And then also we support a harm reduction policy regarding other drugs that may be harmful, and our thought would be, well, if it's the harmful effects of the drug that are the problem, then that's not really a crime by itself. That then we need to guide people toward the right direction as far as getting the help they need. I think there are organizations that will work voluntarily to help people with addiction problems, and they don't require money, and they actually work quite fine without any government assistance. And so I think that's one avenue that doesn't even have to involve any government involvement, and probably would be more effective. The other things regarding then, of course, I mentioned the roads, that we could, again, we do not need more tax revenue for that. And what I would encourage people to do is get involved with Our America Initiative at ouramericaainitiative.com. You can also, just on your own or with us, joining us with our efforts, talk to your legislator or even visit Lansing. Go there, talk to the different senators, state senators, and state representatives, and make sure that they understand what your views on policy are. Because what happens is the people actually get money from the politicians, and their contracts are benefited directly from certain rules that get passed into law. Those people are powerful, and those people will wine and dine those legislators and make sure they'll get their way. And the rest of the people who have some good common sense views, but it doesn't involve the government giving money to somebody, they often don't get heard because they don't have a lot of profit to make off it, so they're not so inclined to spend their day going to talk to these politicians. But as far as your own harm reduction strategy, I recommend doing it, because all these favors that do get done that grow government against the choices of the individual, there are people profiting from that, and those people will show up, and those people will want to dine those legislators. So they got to realize that there is a popular consensus in the other direction to vote otherwise and to write bills that do otherwise and to allow bills out of committee that are trapped.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen, Scotty Bowman. Scotty Bowman and Kim McCrory. This sort of ties up the roll of vote here at Wayne State University. And some of my closing remarks, I've noticed some common threads. So many issues here in the state of Michigan, from, like I said earlier, water, money, misallocation of funds. You got the government spending $14 million on some office furniture, and you got people in the city of Detroit not having any water, and they only need $1.9 million. So $14 million to put office furniture in Lansing versus $1.9 million to give water to the people of the city of Detroit. I don't know. This sort of shows a lot of the political landscape here in the state of Michigan. It does go well beyond marijuana. Marijuana is a hot topic largely due to the fact that it's a civil topic. It is the drug war that has caused much of the decay that you see in the city of Detroit today. And yeah, the Motor City, yeah, the automobile companies, yeah, there's the industry that pulled out of the city, yes, there's that. But the war that has been engaged upon the citizenry has most often come from the law enforcement agencies within the state of Michigan. We have seen, and it has been voiced, militarization of police is real. Some people understand that it's a comfort zone it provides, other people see it as an intrusion on their personal life. Those decisions are up to the individual to make. This is the Roll the Vote, a series of concerts and events and speaking engagements. We are not trying to tell people what to think, but we are definitely trying to encourage you to think. Asking that you think for yourself, you do the research for yourself, and then you get out into your world and that you take part in this world that you're offered, and that maybe you try your best to make it a better place like everybody here did today. Everybody here today volunteered their time. Nobody here was paid. The facility was donated to us by the college. Some of the sponsors outside and the vendor tables did help out with a little bit of money to help make this happen. So I'd like to thank some of those people, and we'll do that in the video later. I'd like to thank the speakers and the guests that we had here today. This does officially conclude the Roll the Vote, September 19th, 2015, Wayne State University. Thank you.